Is he bringing it back?
I think they borrowed it outside.
Oh, yeah.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naranchaya Narottamam.
Naranchaya Narottamam.
Devim Saraswati Vyasam.
Devim Saraswati Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudirayat.
Tato Jayamudirayat.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God and Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Srinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Srinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Shravana Kirtanaha. Vidyantasto Vadrani.
Vidyantasto Vadrani.
Vidunoti Saritsatam.
Vidunoti Saritsatam.
Shri Krishna, the personality of God, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, is the benefactor of the truthful devotee. Did I forget to read the English of the other one?
No.
Oh, I did? Okay. Where's my head? Okay. Cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. I didn't read the English. I did not, did I? Anybody know if I did or not? Nobody even knows. Probably didn't. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is...
No, the English one you haven't read yet.
Huh?
You haven't read the English.
Okay. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, this is why I like to read it, because I like that line. It's the very means of conquest. One should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God and Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Okay, so now we're down to the third one. Nashtapreshu Bhadreshu.
Nashtapreshu Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Naistaki.
Bhagavati Naistaki.
By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So we have a reading from...
Tell us if this goes.
I'm not saying anything.
What's going on? We have a reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, The Cause of All Causes, line 11. It's 11. Yena Swa Rochisha Vishvam Yena Swa Rochisha Vishvam
Yena Swa Vishvam
Rochitam
Rochayami Aham
Rochitam Rochayami Aham Yatarko Ganir
Somo
Yatarko Ganir Yatasomo Yatarksha
Graha
Yatarksha Graha Taraka Yena Swarochisha Vishvam Rochitam Rochayami Aham Yatarko Gnir Yatasomo Yatarksha Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Rochitam rochayamyaham.
Rochitam rochayamyaham.
Yatarko gnir yatasomo.
Yatarko agnir yatasomo.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Rochitam rochayamyaham.
Rochitam rochayamyaham.
Yatarko gnir yatasomo.
Yatarko gnir-yatasomo.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha. Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Rochitam rochasyamyaham.
Rochitam rochayamyaham.
Yatarko agnir yatasomo.
Yatarko gnir-yatasomo.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yena swarochisha vishvam. Yena swarochisha vishvam. Rochitam rochayamyaham. Rochitam rochasamyaham. Yatako gnir yatasomo. Yatarko gnir yatasomo. Yatarkshagrahatarakaha. Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Rochitam rochayamyaham.
Rochitam rochayamyaham.
Yatarko gnir-yatasomo.
Yatarko gnir yatasomo.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Sounded like
Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Yena swarochisha vishvam.
Rochitam rochayamyaham.
Rochitam rochayamyaham.
Yatarko gnir-yatasomo.
Yatarko gnir yatasomo.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha.
Yatarkshagrahatarakaha. Truly, there's Rochitam, and again, Rocha, me, all the roaches.
Does it really?
Everybody,
Do manifest.
One by one, they're vanishing.
the roaches are vanishing.
Yep, one by one.
I can't go back, I can't do it.
Yeah, this mic thing, I already told the Cowfest unit, they're getting us one, so just bear with us. This mic, she
Mike,
needs-
oh,
Yeah.
actually, I feel like the sense of liberation. No mic in front of me that I have to look around while still talking into it,
I like to
See,
do my
she-
saver.
in the back, and she can't hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't want
kitchen.
to go if I can't hear.
But you have trouble hearing from me when I'm speaking?
No, she works in the back.
I usually work in the
Oh,
back
that's
during
true,
class.
That's true.
And I don't like doing
Well,
class.
mics are definitely important, but for the moment, I'm enjoying my freedom here. Feels
Yeah.
more comfortable. I don't know, when I'm in a conversation, I can't talk loud enough for people to notice I'm talking sometimes. But when I'm up here, I have no trouble. Isn't that strange? Okay, so word meanings. Yena, by
Yena.
whom?
By whom?
Swarochisha,
Swarochisha.
by his own effulgence.
By his own effulgence.
Vishvam,
Vishvam.
all the world.
All the world.
Rochitam,
Rochitam.
already created potentially.
Already created potentially.
Rochayami,
Rochayami.
do manifest.
Do manifest.
Aham,
Aham. I.
Yata,
Yata.
as much.
As much.
Arkaha,
Arkaha.
the sun.
The sun.
Agni,
Agni.
fire.
Fire.
Yata,
Yata.
as.
As.
Somaha,
Somaha.
the moon.
The moon.
Yata,
Yata.
as also.
As also.
Riksha,
Riksha.
the firmament.
The firmament.
Graha,
Graha.
the influential planets.
the influential planets,
Tarakaha,
Tarakaha,
the stars.
the stars.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
I create after the Lord's creation by His personal effulgence, known as the Brahmajyoti. Just as when the sun manifests its fire, the moon, the firmament, the influential planets, and the twinkling stars also manifest their brightness. Please repeat. I create after the Lord's creation.
I create after the Lord's creation
By His personal effulgence.
by His personal effulgence,
Known as the Brahmajyoti.
known as the Brahmajyoti,
Just as when the sun manifests its fire,
just as when the sun manifests its fire,
the moon,
the moon,
the firmament,
the
the influential planets,
influential planets,
and the twinkling stars
and the twinkling stars
also manifest their brightness.
also manifest their brightness.
Doesn't it sort of turn inside out all our conceptions right there? So it's going to be an interesting class. Lord Brahmaji said to Narada that his impression that Brahma was not the supreme authority in the creation was correct. Sometimes less intelligent men have the foolish impression that Brahma is the cause of all causes. But Narada wanted to clear the matter by the statements of Brahmaji, the supreme authority in the universe. As the decision of the Supreme Court of a state is final, similarly the judgment of Brahmaji, the supreme authority in the universe, is final in the Vedic process of acquiring knowledge. As we have already affirmed in the previous verse, Naradaji was a liberated soul. Therefore, he was not one of the less intelligent men who accept a false god or gods in their own ways. He represented himself as less intelligent, and yet intelligently presented it out to be cleared by the supreme authority, so that the uninformed might take note of it and be rightly informed about the intricacies of the creation and the Creator. In this verse, Brahmaji clears up the wrong impression held by the less intelligent and affirms that he creates the universal variegatedness after the potential creation by the glaring effulgence of Lord Sri Krishna. Brahmaji has also separately given this statement in the Samhita known as the Brahma Samhita 540, where he says, Yasya prabha prabhavato jagadanda koti shvashesha vasudadi vibhuti venam tad brahma nishkalamanantam ashesha bhutam govindamadi buddhu shantam aham bhajami. I serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental bodily effulgence, known as the Brahmajyoti, which is unlimited, unfathomed, and all-pervasive, is the cause of the creation of unlimited numbers of planets, etc., with the varieties of climates and specific conditions of life. The same statement is in the Bhagavad Gita 14:27, which I can read right now. Where Krishna says, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. Sometimes phones start jumping. Okay, the same statement is in the Bhagavad Gita 14:27, which I just read. Lord Krishna is the background of the Brahmajyoti, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. In the Nirukti or Vedic dictionary, the import of pratishta is mentioned as that which establishes. So the Brahmajyoti is not independent or self-sufficient. Lord Sri Krishna is ultimately the creator of the Brahmajyoti, mentioned in this verse as Swarochisha, or the effulgence of the transcendental body of the Lord. This Brahmajyoti is all-pervading, and all creation is made possible by its potential power. Therefore, the Vedic hymns declare that everything that exists is being sustained by the Brahmajyoti, Sarvam Kal Vidam Brahma. Therefore, the potential seed of all creation is the Brahmajyoti, and the same Brahmajyoti, unlimited and unfathomed, is established by the Lord. Therefore, Lord Sri Krishna is ultimately the supreme cause of all creation, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. And that's from Bhagavad Gita, that's chapter 10:8. Sure. One should not expect the Lord to create like a blacksmith with a hammer and other instruments. the Lord creates by his potencies. He has his multifarious potencies, parasya shaktir vividhaiva shruyate. Just as the small seed of a banyan tree has the potency to create a big banyan tree, the Lord disseminates all varieties of seeds by his potential Brahmajyoti, Swarochi Sha. And the seeds are made to develop by the watering process of persons like Brahma. Brahma cannot create the seeds, but he can manifest the seed into a tree, just as a gardener helps plants and orchards to grow by the watering process. The example cited here of the sun is very appropriate. In the material world, the sun is the cause of all illumination. Fire, electricity, the rays of the moon, etc. All luminaries in the sky are creations of the sun. The sun is the creation of the Brahmajyoti, and the Brahmajyoti is the effulgence of the Lord. Thus, the ultimate cause of creation is the Lord. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So this is a pretty interesting purport. It kind of, verse of purport kind of like shocked me in a sense, because you have categories in your mind. You learn things and you sort them out. You put things in categories in the philosophy, right? And so I had it that material energy is different from the spiritual energy. There's no material energy in the spiritual world, but there's this place covered by a cloud, and that's where the material energy is, which is the lower energy of Krishna, and inferior energy. And then that's where he enters that and expands and creates the blueprint for the sense organs and all senses and all that. So, I can hear all the conversations, except I can't hear what you're saying, but there's not very many people here. It is kind of awkward. Sorry.
It's like they're talking over there. It's just like.
So they're talking over there. So you're talking about how they're talking.
You're like trying to book out.
Well, anyway.
It's just so much, there's no mic.
Yeah.
So if there is some going on,
yeah,
you just can't concentrate.
Yeah, well, it's because there's no mic. I feel like I can't talk over the little whispering. So I will try to talk loud and see if this helps. Okay.
Just tell them we don't have mic. Good.
Who is that?
Those two. There's one in and it's getting louder and louder. I just can't concentrate.
Tense topic.
Okay, let's see.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, you ready? So, we'll try to listen.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, this verse is very interesting because it shocked me out of my idea of putting things in categories. So I was saying how I have the category in my mind that there is the inferior energy of Krishna and the superior energy. Okay? There's no inferior energy in the material world and the spiritual world. It's all conscious. Inferior energy is unconscious. So when it's between creations, it's in this kind of unmanifested form called pradhana. And I had in my mind, I guess, a place, like a cabinet or something, not really, but like a part of the spiritual world where it sits and waits inside this cloud for it to be creation time again. When Mahavishnu is, he's breathed in, breathed out, and he's breathed in, he's going to breathe out again. So it's waiting, and it's going to be created again. And then, this is my category, that I have this idea that pradhana is not in the spiritual world, so it must be waiting somewhere. It's this inferior energy. And that's what everything is created, because when Mahavishnu enters and he starts to create the modes and then the categories of senses and elements and all these things, I figure he's doing it out of that pradhana. He's expanding it. So all of a sudden, it's the Brahmajyoti. So then I thought, wow, this is like really different. And so then I thought, okay, what's the relationship between the Brahmajyoti and the pradhana? I don't remember reading that anywhere. So I tried to look it up. and different places. I didn't happen to find a place where it said Brahmajyoti, but I found where it almost says that clearly. So I'll read some of these things. But anyways, let's see, anything else I was going to say about, the stars, before I go further, about the, according to this verse, and it's spoken by Brahma, Lord Brahma, who ought to know, the stars get their light from the sun. So this is really different too. This is totally turns inside out our whole material conception that the scientists have come up with. And they have this what is it called? The red shift theory, where if light is moving really fast, it changes because it's coming, just like sound when a train comes to you, it's real high pitch and it passes you and it's low pitch and it's blowing the whistle. So they have this idea of the red shift. When light is coming toward you, it turns more red because there's a shift.
The object.
Right?
When the object that's emitting the light
is coming towards you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and when it's going away, it's the opposite. So based on this theory that cannot be proven out in space between here and all the stars, there's no way really to prove it. They can make all kinds of measurements and everything, but they can do creative mathematics, and there's no way to prove it. So based on this red shift theory, they've got a whole map of the universe, and they tell you exactly how many light years away all the stars are and everything. They got it all figured out, and how there are different kinds of suns and everything. They got it all figured out. And apparently it's different from what Lord Brahma says. So we have this right there as a problem. So, so that's interesting right there. This is a completely different, possibly a completely different universe from what we think. Maybe the galaxies that they're seeing are completely different from what we think they are. I think we got it figured out. So anyway, that's just kind of a superficial shock. Comes from this verse. And then, of course, I've heard this concept before. But then inside is this, everything is created after Brahmajyoti. It says that I create after the Lord's creation by his personal effulgence, the Brahmajyoti. So Lord Brahma creates after the Brahmajyoti is the cause of all the creation. So this is like different from how I had everything sorted out in categories. So you have to like rethink. So anyways, the Brahmajyoti, now I have to look for these things. Let's see. We'll start with Bhagavad Gita 10, 12, and 13. Easier to read. To 13. The verse is, this is on the purport, the verse just to orient you. Arjuna said, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa confirm this truth about you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. So, when I found this, it was all highlighted for me. Okay, the Kena Upanishad, in the Kena Upanishad, it is stated that the Supreme Brahman is the rest for everything. And Krishna has already explained that everything is resting on him. So this is going to be, okay, what's the Brahman? Try to figure out what everything is. This is interesting because I also want to make a point. This touches into Achintya Veda, Veda Tattva, simultaneously, inconceivably one and different, and which is a philosophy, which actually is about gyan, or knowledge of what is spiritual, what is material. So being interested in this, does this make us jnanis or jnana yogis? Actually, if it was the case, Prabhupada would not have packed his books with all this knowledge. So we are supposed to know. And there is a quote, which I should put in my little book because I refer to it a lot. Prabhupada said that philosophical speculation, although he uses the term philosophical speculation loosely in different cases, but he made a difference for somebody made a distinction in a letter. Philosophical speculation is when you read or you hear the truth and you try to think how it could be so. So then you enter mental speculation to think how it could be so, but it's in obedience to the scripture. You already have accepted the truth. So the mental speculation that he is discouraging is when you are acting independently, you're trying to figure it out yourself. Not this, not that. Okay, what is spiritual? Neti, not this, not that. So you go through everything and every level of your understanding and try to figure out what's spiritual, what isn't. So it's a lot of not this, not that. You just keep on deleting things that actually aren't spiritual because you've thought through to the other side and say, okay, that's not spiritual. But that's mental speculation, and you end up impersonalist. So we are trying to philosophically speculate in obedience to Prabhupada's giving us transcendental knowledge. So then we try to understand how it could be, because we're supposed to have Vigyan, which is realized knowledge. We're not supposed to just spend the rest of our life quoting Prabhupada or memorizing quotes. We're supposed to realize it and understand it. And then you can even put it in your own words and still be true to Prabhupada. So that's what that means, that you really understood it. So we're supposed to understand this, and let's see, what did that lead to? We're supposed to think about the meaning of all this. So we want to know. Oh, I asked this question years ago of Garuda Das, the Prabhupada disciple, Garuda, big scholar. He was given a class. He was visiting and giving a class where I was, and I asked the question, well, if we're not supposed to be Jnanis or Jnani Yogis, why is there so much Jnana in Prabhupada's books? And he said, for the devotee, it becomes poetry, because it's describing everything Krishna did. So I thought that was pretty beautiful. So when we try to understand in depth all this Jnana, even Maharaj Parikshit, pure devotee, was going to die in 7 days. He wanted to know about the creation. He wanted to understand everything, because he wanted to appreciate what Krishna did. So it becomes like poetry. So nobody should ever wonder, why do we analyze these things? Isn't that Jnana and Jnana Yogis or something? No, we don't want to maintain our confusion about what spiritual is, and what we'll be hanging on to something material because we don't even know it's not spiritual. So we want to understand these things. When we get to be absolutely high pure devotees, all we want to do is serve Krishna. But that's supported by this knowledge. So, okay. So Brahman is the rest for everything. Brahman in the glossary, Brahman has 4. I'll read it easily. I can say them probably, but it takes me a little time. It has 4 definitions. 1, the individual soul. 2, the impersonal, all-pervasive aspect of the Supreme. 3, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 4, the Mahat Tattva, or total material substance. So that's also included. That's Brahman, the total material substance, which is pradhana. That's the word for the total material substance when it's undifferentiated, not even 3 modes. It's pradhana. When we read about that, the word comes up here and there, but we read about it in 12th canto, where Shukadeva Goswami is explaining to Maharaj Parikshit, helping him to let go of this world, because it's almost time to go. He's helping him to, he's describing the ultimate destruction and how all the elements go back inside the one before. Like they were expanded from, adding new qualities, starting with like false ego, then ether, then air, then fire, then water, then earth, each one having another quality for the senses. And then it goes back, reabsorbs back in, and it goes backwards till there's nothing left, and even the modes are absorbed in, and all is left is indescribable, undistinguishable, undifferentiated pradhana. It's indescribable. It doesn't even have space, because ether is like space. You know, it doesn't even have anything, but it exists. It's Krishna's inferior energy. It exists. And I always had the idea that this is something that exists in where the material world is going to be created. And however it appears here, this is why the interesting question is, everything comes from the Brahma Jyoti. So then what's the relationship between the Brahma Jyoti and the Pradhana? Both of them are described as basically undifferentiated, absolute, pure, perfect, indescribable, no qualities. They're both described that way. One is material and one is spiritual. What's their connection? Apparently, they're profoundly connected here. So that's, otherwise, how could Brahma be saying that he created after Krishna's potential creation in the Brahma Jyoti? So, anyway, I have these quotes. 424 per part, per port. 424. It's easier to read. Maybe once I get my cataract surgery, I'll be able to read the book easier in the dark, in the dim. It's sort of dim, let's see. 424. Okay, the verse is, a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. So in other words, things turn spiritual when you offer them to Krishna. So in the purport, I have to find that. It's not highlighted.
Is it silent meditation time?
Yes.
He just happened to come in at that time.
Silence. It's a silent meditation. Now I have to look up.
Reading.
I didn't write down where in the purport it is, and it's a long purport. And when I was looking it up, it was highlighted, which was a lot easier.
Have you read the whole purport already?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm getting verses.
I got caught up in something else.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, here, I found it. So I'll catch up a little bit. That we're talking about how in the verse, Lord Brahma says he creates after the potential creation of the Brahma Jyoti. And I'm saying, wait a minute, this is like different because I thought it was from the potential creation in the when the pradhana is formed into its different qualities. And then I thought that was the first creation, and there's no. And the Brahma Jyoti is like locked out here. I mean, we're within it, but we can't see it because of the cloud, and it's dark, and so on. So I had it all categorized in my mind, and this is different. Lord Brahma is saying he's creating after the Brahma Jyoti. So I'm exploring this Brahma Jyoti thing. So this is Bhagavad Gita 4:24 in the purport. The word Brahman, means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma Jyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Of course, the word Jyoti means light. So Brahma is spiritual. Brahman, spiritual light. And it's all not different from Krishna, of course. So when I read in the glossary the 4 definitions of Brahman that occur in the Bhagavad Gita, actually there's only one definition. It means spirit, whatever is spiritual. So in those 4 different ways, it means the spiritual thing. It means the impersonal aspect, that's spiritual. It means Krishna, that's spiritual, of course, Krishna. It means the individual soul, that's spiritual, not matter. And then the Mahatattva. But then here, the Mahatattva, even though it's made of Krishna's inferior energy, it's apparently the same as the Brahma Jyoti.
Yeah.
Because that's what. So this was confused. Well, I had a categorization in my mind that the inferior energy is here, the Brahma Jyoti is here.
There's a verse that I regularly quote from the 6th canto that describes that all of these things, Chitaika and Abhavanam Vikoparutam Swayam, Bhushanalingaika, Tate Shakti Shamaya, Tena Vasachamanam Savabhyo Bhagavanadi, Patusabhai Surupana, Sada Savata Sabha. Supreme Personality, God, the living entities, the material energy, the spiritual energy, are all simultaneously one, and they're all the same.
Yeah, well, I did say this is about Achintya Veda Veda Tattva.
So, but the thing is that it's the inferior energy of God, but it's God. Krishna's in these atoms.
Well, I know this. Yeah, I'm
it's part of the Brahma Jyoti. It's part of so it is part. If that's your question.
I'm posing a question so that I can unfold my class. I was catching you up.
All right, okay, sorry.
So, anyway, because we think of it as, even though, of course, it's all one, in a way, it's all Krishna, yet, I had, it's eternally different too. So I have, categories placed certain ways in my mind. So, Brahman is spiritual. Let's see, a little bit lower, let's see. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahma Jyoti, yes, but when the Jyoti is covered by illusion, Maya, or sense gratification, it's called material. So that is the relationship between the Brahma Jyoti, as I can tell, the Brahma Jyoti and the Pradhana. The Pradhana is what that cloud that covers it must be the cloud of illusion, because then otherwise it is the Brahma Jyoti that's covered by illusion. I'm trying to understand this stuff. Because Brahma says he creates from the Brahma Jyoti. So this is it's just deeper, and we're given the various explanations from various angles to try to understand it. And of course, in our minds, we're trying to understand it. So we sort it out, and we have, not consciously or not consciously, have little categories for things, so that we can keep it all straight, the explanations. And then sometimes we find a different explanation which undoes our categories, sort of. So that's what this class is doing. I'm just looking at it from a different angle. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus the offering, for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent for such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are all combined together, Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter dovetailed for the cause of the Absolute Truth regains its spiritual quality. So Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. So, and I just find this is very, very fascinating subject matter. So I'll just continue reading my different quotes here. 10. The verse is, one who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Material word is the sum total. Okay, I have to find it now.
Is it warm in here?
Warm? Probably.
Can I open a window?
I don't care.
Yeah, no one right
While I'm looking, it'll fill in the gap while I'm looking.
Something is open, yeah. Okay.
Sit by the window.
Yeah, I'll sit over here.
Oh, okay, right, it was at the top. Okay. Here, Brahmani means in Krishna consciousness. The material world is a sum total manifestation of the three modes of material nature, technically called the pradhana. Then Vedic
What verse is this?
This is 510, purport, right at the top of the purport. So the real manifestation of the three modes of material nature, technically called the pradhana. Then there's some Sanskrit here indicates that everything in the material world is a manifestation of Brahman, and although the effects are differently manifested, they are non-different from the cause. So in the one sentence it says that everything in the material nature, the material world, is the sum total of the three modes of material nature called pradhana. And then it says the material world is a manifestation of Brahman. So, and then Brahman is the Brahma Jyoti. So I'm just trying to weave it all together, because this philosophy is always beautiful. The knowledge is always beautiful. And that's what this verse is about. So let's see. And then in 519, okay, those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they're already situated in Brahman. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence. So that's describing Brahman realization. It's just striving that even like, how do I say, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's not divided up by different things. It's perfect. It's Brahman realization. That's why those who get that far think all is one, and they think that's done, because they experience that. And also the pradhana, when it's described, instead of taking time looking for it, I'll just say it again, when everything gets wrapped up in the 12th canto, Shukadeva Goswami is telling Parishad Maharaj, when everything gets reabsorbed into the previous element, it all goes back to, then it's just the Mahatattva with 3 modes of nature, and then the 3 modes get absorbed back in. And then it's the pradhana, which has no distinctions, no qualities, nothing. And Shukadeva Goswami says, indeed it's indescribable. And it has nothing to describe it with. There's nothing, there isn't even space to take it up. There isn't, like that's ether as I understand it, if things expand into space. And then there's no modes of nature. There's nothing to get a handle on to describe it. But it's sort of like the original singularity. We're supposed to have had a singularity where everything somehow existed all in one little spot. And then it blew up. And then we have all this creation. Well, that's not exactly what happened, but the pradhana is sort of like a singularity. I don't know, I thought it's like a certain size or something. But anyway, it's something that is Krishna's inferior energy, and it exists without any qualifications at all, without any of the material qualifications or elements or anything. And yet it exists. It's indescribable. So that description is very similar to Brahman, which has no particular specific qualities or anything. It's just perfect oneness. That Brahman realization. The Brahmajyoti, let's say. The Brahmajyoti is Krishna's impersonal, impersonal aspect that is everywhere. So it's like pradhana is impersonal. The material energy is impersonal, unconscious in its own right. Brahmajyoti is impersonal. Persons have consciousness. Brahmajyoti is Krishna's light. I don't think the Brahmajyoti has its own consciousness. I will go here or there. And it's everywhere, and it's Krishna's light. So it's very similar. The only difference appears to be, that I can find anywhere, the only difference appears to be if it's covered by illusion or not. If it's covered by illusion, it becomes Maya, it becomes material energy. And then Mahavishnu enters that material energy and he desires to have material senses so he can fill it so that everybody else can have material senses. So then creation expands from that. So, let's see. Well, we recently read, this is interesting too, and it can sort of relate. 13. Recently read in the evening classes, 13.5. About different levels of Brahman realization. These are all called Brahman realization. And yeah, there are different levels. Okay. There is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord's energy known as Annamaya, dependence upon food for existence. Of course, in a way, we all have that. We all have that level too. But that to be just at that level, you know nothing about, you're not thinking about who you are, yourself, your body, or anything, just I want food, like a newborn baby, perhaps. And a newborn baby is not really aware, because they come to a certain point and they start noticing their hands and looking at them. So that point is, then in pranamaya, after realizing the supreme absolute truth in food, realizing the supreme absolute truth in food, it's a realization of something God created, so that is made of His energy. So you realize, I am this food and this eating, this mouth. Then in pranamaya, after realizing the supreme absolute truth in food, one can realize the absolute truth in the living symptoms or life forms. As a baby, discovering his own body, looking at his hands, sucking on his toes, learning how to crawl, learning how to do things, learning about other living entities, relating to them. Okay, pranamaya. In jnanamaya, realization extends beyond the living symptoms to the point of thinking, feeling, and willing. starting to be aware. I'm doing a lot of thinking, feeling, and willing. Maybe this is me. Okay, the different ideas of the body. I'm not a body. I'm just this food. I'm just this eating. Okay, I'm this body. It's a very interesting body. And I'm this mind. That's who I really am. I'm this mind. I'm thinking, feeling, and willing. So as the child grows, becomes aware like that. Then there is Brahman realization, which some people never get to, but called Vijnanamaya. Vijnana means realized knowledge, in which the living entity's mind and life symptoms are distinguished from the living entity himself. That person has realized jnana, or knowing that, okay, I'm soul, I'm not this body or this mind, I'm something beyond. The next and supreme stage is Anandamaya, realization of the all-blissful nature. Thus there are 5 stages of Brahman realization, which are called Brahmapucham. Out of these, the first 3, Annamaya, Pranamaya, and Jnanamaya, involve the field of activities of the living entities. Transcendental to all these field of activities is the Supreme Lord, who is called Anandamaya, and so on. So these are all levels of Brahman realization, although the first 3 don't seem at all spiritual. But material nature is made of spiritual nature, so it's made of the spiritual light of Krishna, covered by illusion. Quite fascinating.
What verse is that?
That was 13.5 in the program.
Yeah, so I heard this just recently that, they say that the universe is expanding, and they think it's because there was the explosion. But the explanation given by the Shastra is that when Mahavishnu enters into the pradhana, then it starts to expand. When he enters it, he's expanding it by his presence.
There's a verse that says that?
And it was in a class, and or I was reading, it was a class, and it was from a class on the 3rd canto, where there's similar discussions going on about, where this is being talked, get into a deeper level of it. And it was in that class, and I don't know, they read it. It was in the 3rd canto, and I'd have to do the actual research, but I just heard this about 10 days ago. It's pretty fresh in my mind, and I can remember where I heard it, but I have to go back to it though. I listened to a class online. I can research it. But Vishnu enters, and then because he enters, it expands.
We have pictures of saying, okay, it's here, Mahavishnu is here. Okay, it doesn't sound like, but we're given simple explanations so we can have pictures, so we can understand it. And actually, what you're saying, we can't picture it that way exactly, but Chincha, Veda, Veda, Tattva, simultaneously one and different. So many levels of that's true, so many ways that's true, that his very presence. And yet it's expanding by the expansion of the material elements, like starting with ether, which has to be a place where sound can travel, and where the other things can be shaped in. It must be something like space. There's perhaps no space until it gets expanded. But that would be, okay, by Mahavishnu. So it's all very mysterious. Thank you. Yes. Okay, this is 13:13, the verse itself. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. And the purport, Prabhupada explains that the Lord has explained the field of activities and the knower of the field. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the field of activities. Now he begins to explain the knowable, first the soul and then the supersoul. By knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the supersoul, one can relish the nectar of life. So this is the beginning of a series of verses in chapter 13, describing the supersoul. But this one, he says first the soul and then the supersoul. So this verse is about the soul, So the Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So Prabhupada said this is about the soul and the super soul. This verse is about the soul. So the soul is spirit, beginningless and subordinate to Krishna, and it lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So even though souls are so illusion, we think we're involved in the cause and effect. We're actually beyond it. So this is interesting, but this beginningless and subordinate, it just sort of expresses this Brahman, this indescribable Brahman. Pradhana is indescribable, because this time it's about the souls, but the material energy also, I don't know why I put this in. I thought it was interesting. So 14.3. Okay, the total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living beings. So Krishna impregnates Brahman. Brahman is his spiritual life. Brahma Jyoti is the light of his spiritual nature, and he impregnates this, he impregnates the material energy. So we have to understand that Pradhana is Brahma Jyoti covered by Maya, because we saw that. And it's not an easy thing to understand, because especially we have categories, like I have categories in my mind so I can keep all this straight, and it kind of goes beyond the boundaries of categories. So yeah, I'll stop here and see if there's any comments or questions.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to go get ready to I'm taking
Oh,
the
the
voice
Harinam.
and Harinam.
Okay. Thanks for coming and pass for a little while.
Hi, you're going on Harinam?
Yeah,
Haribol. Thank you.
I'm sorry I'm missing you.
I'm sorry to be not there too, but I'm so glad someone's bringing everyone.
I'm not, well, I don't know exactly how it's working, but I know I'm bringing 3 people.
Jai.
And there's someone going to meet us with me.
Haribol. Thank you, Prabhu.
I know. But I'm going to wear pants.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's a little chilly.
Sorry.
Okay.
And
So you had, one else one question. You had a question?
Yeah, at the end of the report, it has a nice statement.
And the purport, which verse?
2:5:11.
2:5, oh, the one for today.
Yeah, all the luminaries in the sky are creations of the sun. The sun is the creation of the Brahma-jyoti, and the Brahma-jyoti is the effulgence of the Lord. Thus, the ultimate cause of creation is the Lord. I think that's pretty cool.
The sun is the creation of Brahma-jyoti. It's so interesting. But the Brahma-jyoti is everywhere. It's here, but we can't see it. Why can't we see it? Because we're in Maya. If somebody gets out of Maya, maybe they can see it. You know, they can see Krishna, they can see Brahma-jyoti.
Yeah, they can see it all.
So,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Thank you.